Hello everyone, my name is Gary Thomas and I'm with the International and Foreign Language Education Office within the Department of Education, and I am pleased to serve as your moderator today. During this session, we will be focusing on ways in which institutions can leverage technology for less commonly taught language instruction and assessment. Our goal for this session is to provide you with an overview of the technology and assessment tools that grantee institutions can leverage to make language training accessible for students who may not have an opportunity to learn a less commonly taught language. During this session, we will touch on online course development for language learning. We will cover ways in which institutions can increase student access to the less commonly taught languages. We will also talk about how to leverage resources and technology and establish possible collaborations with other institutions to offer online language learning opportunities for students. And last but certainly not least, we will also focus on language assessment. Please note that we will not be taking any questions until all panelists have presented. We ask that you submit your questions online and we will direct them to the panel members. Questions can be submitted via the chat box located at the bottom of the screen. First up, we are excited to have Michael Cullinane, who is the Associate Director of the Center for Southeast Asia Studies at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, as well as Mary Jo Wilson, who serves as the Assistant Director of Business Operations and Grants Management, also at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. They will share their experiences with the least commonly taught languages. They will discuss their ongoing institutional cooperation which focuses on the less commonly taught languages and their swap agreement with UC Berkeley. Mike and Mary Jo, you now have the floor.
Start. I'm Mike. This is Mary Jo. Basically, what we're going to do is talk administratively first about how we set up two programs, and Mary Jo, I think later on, will talk a little bit more about the technology. So what I like to call our group now is the University of Wisconsin Partnership for Distance Instruction in Southeast Asian Languages. All right. There are three groups here at campus that work on this. Where I am and where Mary Jo was is the Center for Southeast Asian Studies, which has been an NRC for Southeast Asia since 1981. We work very closely with the Department of Asian Languages and Cultures, which is the language teaching department. And all of us work very closely with the College of Letters and Science Learning Support Services, which makes it all happen technologically. The focus for us then is the teaching and the learning of Southeast Asian languages. All of these, as suggested, are low enrollment. We call them the least of the less commonly taught languages. And let me give you the situation at Wisconsin first, because it makes more sense that way. First of all, we teach 5 Southeast Asian languages during the academic year, every single year. We teach Filipino, we teach Hmong, we teach Indonesian, we teach Thai, and we teach Vietnamese, and we try to teach them at multiple levels, anywhere from 2 to 3 all year round. All of these 5 languages are also taught at our Summer Intensive Language Institute, which we call the Southeast Asian Studies Summer Institute, which Mary Jo will talk about later. We also believe that all of these languages, the teachers for all of these languages at UW, are able to offer these languages by distance in a number of ways that we'll talk about in a minute. The other issue that we have is that we have students, we have a major program in Southeast Asian Studies, so there are 3 Southeast Asian languages that we do not teach, that we try to obtain through distance, and those would be Burmese, Khmer, and Lao, and especially the first 2. All of these are offered during our Summer Intensive Language Institute, CIASI, and all of our students, when they have the need, we try to find external ways for them to learn these languages on their own. Let me talk then about how we then, as a university then and a center for Southeast Asian languages, try to leverage the technology to offer it, and we have 3 different things we do. We're going to talk briefly about all 3. Mary Jo will talk mostly about the center. The first one we could simply call ongoing institutional cooperation, and I'll say a few things about that in a minute. The second one would be individual swap programs that were mentioned in the beginning, where we offer, we contract with a university that has a language that we don't have, and we try to swap one that we have. The third way is through CASI, and we use this to enhance our intensive language program so that we can offer distance that way. Let me first talk a little bit about the institutional linkage. The institutional is where we hear language instruction with members are social in the academic audience, 14 campuses, the Big 10 plus. And basically, we offer these at no extra cost. Everyone has to pay their tuition. We offer them with registration at UW-Madison for the courses, and all of the instruction is synchronous. Right? In the past, we've been doing this for quite some time. I'll just give you an idea of how it works in the last 2 years. In 2016-17, we offered 3 students at the University of Illinois beginning level Indonesian, and we offered 1 student at Minnesota advanced Indonesian instruction. This year, this fall, we're offering 3 students in intermediate Indonesian at the University of Illinois. And this is low enrollment. It's as it's needed, and we do it within the consortium of the Big 10 Academic Alliance. The second thing that we've initiated over the past, since 2013, are what we call language swaps. And this is largely for us to find institutions across the United States that offer languages of Southeast Asia that we do not teach. And we try to get hookups with them where we offer them a language that we have, and they offer us the language that they have. And if we look at this, the swap that's ongoing, we've had a couple of them in the past. So the one that's still going is a swap that we have with the University of California at Berkeley. So we can call it the UW-Madison UC Berkeley swap. We send Thai, usually at the intermediate or advanced level, to Berkeley, and we get multiple levels of Khmer back from Berkeley. There's no extra cost to the students at either end. There are a number of different technological options that we use, but it's all synchronous, right? And there's no registration problems. Everyone registers at their own university, right? And it works pretty clearly that way. Since 2013, this program alone, we have taught 29 students at Berkeley in intermediate or advanced Thai, and Berkeley has taught 7 of our graduate students, often people who are ready to go to the field, in Khmer. So it's been a very successful program for us. The third program that we do is, as I said, is to enhance our intensive summer language program. And Mary Jo is going to tell you about how that works because it has the longest history.
Thanks,
Mary.
Mike. So I was just going to talk a little bit about CASI. Mike introduced it already. It's the Southeast Asian Studies Summer Institute, where we offer instruction to undergraduates, graduates, and professionals from around the country at first, second, and third year levels in Burmese, Filipino, Hmong, Indonesian, Khmer, Lao, Thai, and Vietnamese. It's an intensive course, so instruction is equivalent to 2 semesters of study with full academic year credit. The majority of students attending CASI are in degree programs at other schools and are just coming to the University of Wisconsin-Madison just for the summer language study. It's hosted by University of Wisconsin-Madison, but advised by representatives from all the Southeast Asia NRCs. Classes are held for 8 weeks in the summer from 8 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Monday through Friday, and students typically have another 3 to 4 hours of homework every day. For any students, whether they're distance or in the traditional classroom, the instruction is given in small individualized groups taught by a team consisting of a coordinator and 1 or 2 other teachers. Team teaching is common, and nearly all the instructors have a lot of experience, more than 10 years experience teaching their language at the college level. The classes tend to be quite small. Enrollment, average class size is around 6 students per class. It can range from 4 to 10 students. And it's very communicatively oriented. So it requires synchronous participation. And there's frequent interaction between the teachers and students. between students and, doing pair work or small group work or role plays. In 2012, CIASI began to offer spots for distance students in our summer intensive classes. I'd been getting these kinds of inquiries for years, and we were finally able to start in summer 2012. So we had 1 distance student in 2012, 7 in 2013, on up to 12 the next year, 10 the year after that, 6 in 2016. We just had 3 distance students this past summer. Typically, what that looks like is just 1 distance student in a class, and the other students in the class are participating in a normal or traditional classroom way. Occasionally, a class can try to accommodate 2 distance students in 1 classroom along with the rest of the students, but that's rather unusual. In terms of modes of how we make that work, whenever possible, we prefer to hold these classes in a dedicated video conferencing classroom. But those kinds of facilities on campus are rare, and it's hard for us to find enough of those classrooms to make that possible for all the classes. So it's more common for us to have distance students in a rather low-tech way. They're on an iPad that's attached to a tripod in the classroom. It's rather low tech. We did have an opportunity one summer to hold an all virtual classroom where there was no classroom per se, but all the students and the instructor were meeting in an online meeting format, and that was for an advanced Thai language class. I just wanted to talk a little bit administratively in order to make that work. In addition to the students having to register and sign up for classes and stuff like that, there's some administrative work to make that happen that needs to be taken into account. 3 to 4 months before the start of class, we screen all of the applicants who express an interest in being a distance student. We need to make sure that they understand that this is synchronous and participatory. We get some students who think, oh, it's distance, so I can, take it in my pajamas, or I don't actually have to attend. Well, they do have to attend, and they do have to present themselves and be, just like they would be in a classroom. We have to do some tech testing to make sure that they have the right, fast enough computer and high-speed internet. We conduct a minimum of 2 tests per applicant, about 20 minutes each, to test for reliability of video and audio signal, and also to listen for things that the students may not hear themselves, like unwanted background noise of traffic, distracting traffic noise, or sounds from their roommates or whatever. And then also during instruction, we have 1 or 2 student assistants on call, essentially on hand, who can troubleshoot in case of technical problems. Just a couple other notes. In terms of, from the instructors' perspectives, what the feedback that they've given to me is that, the instructors really do need plenty of time beforehand to learn about and figure out how they're going to incorporate technologies into their, into their classroom to help with distance instruction. They've reported to me that it makes the classroom planning much tighter and less flexible. So handouts and homework have to be uploaded so that the distance students can have access to them. We found that they have to manage their files very, very well. Poor file management leads to confusion and frustration. It also affects the pace of instruction. There's less flexibility. So for example, if an instructor wants to tell the distance student, okay, log off for 3 minutes to watch this video clip, the instructor then cannot make the clip last longer or cut it off shorter than that. So it affects their ability to be flexible in the classroom. But on the balance, I would say we keep doing it because it's been a success. It allows for a very modest number of additional students to have access to instruction that they otherwise wouldn't have. So anyway, that's a quick rundown.
Okay. All right. Do you have anything else for us, or? Okay. Okay. Well, thank you very much for providing a quite innovative look into the language programs that online language programs that you're offering, and we certainly thank you for taking the time. And hold tight. We'll be back with some questions later in the session. Okay. Next up, we have Kate Paesani from the University of Minnesota. Kate is the director of the Center for Advanced Research on Language Acquisition, which is the Title VI Language Resource Center at the University of Minnesota. The title of her presentation is Transitioning to Teaching Language Online.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I am presenting a project that was organized by our online programs project director, Marlene Johnsoy, who was unable to be here today. You'll have her contact information on the first slide of our presentation. If there are any questions that I can't answer during the Q&A, she'll be happy to follow up with you. You can just email her directly. So I'm going to give you an overview of a 5-year project designed to prepare teachers of less commonly taught languages to teach language courses online. So I'll first provide a little bit of history of the project, then I'll present the goals and content of the course, which is called Transitioning to Teaching Language Online. You can see that on the slide. I'll abbreviate that as TTLO throughout the presentation. And then I'll conclude with challenges, successes, and the impact of the project. So could you forward to the next slide, please? So what you see here on the slide is a framework that Marlene developed that is based on her experiences with teaching online and her interest in research about professional development for online teaching. The purpose of the model is to show how various aspects of teacher professional development, technology, and knowledge of pedagogical practices can come together to provide a space for learning the pedagogy and technology for teaching language online. When Marlene began thinking about how CARLA might apply this model, the only program available for language teachers at that point was a TESOL certificate in online teaching. So in 2012, she sent out a survey to experienced online language teachers of all languages to find out more. We had 147 respondents to the survey from a variety of backgrounds. Many were longtime teachers interested in technology, and many of them had made the move online by teaching themselves how to develop online courses. There were some courses in professional development mentioned in the survey, but notably there was very little that specifically targeted how to teach languages online. Based in part on an online course for learning technology already taught at CARLA, Marlene developed a plan for a completely online course to teach language teachers how to teach online. And this course was specifically targeted to address the needs of less commonly taught languages teachers who struggle to maintain high enough enrollments to keep their courses running, and for students who want to learn LCTLs but may not have access to them at their home institution. The course was initially funded by StarTalk to work with teachers of 11 critical languages. Since then, we have also been offering the course as a CARLA Summer Institute to teachers of all languages, not just less commonly taught languages. Next slide, please. So what you see here on the slide are the goals and experiential learning cycle of the course. The goals of the course are essentially for language teachers to get the experience of being an online student before teaching online, to sort of get a feel for the experience and develop some empathy for their future online students. They also have a mini lab course where teachers learn a bit of Spanish, again, to see how learning a language online feels, and also to experience some of the activities that they'll be incorporating into their courses. And then they learn new web-based tools that can help them with teaching language online. The course is very experiential in nature, and it follows, in most instances, a cycle of experiencing activities from the learner's point of view, reflection on and analysis of the activities, creating activities for future students, testing the activities with peers, and reflecting on how the testing went, including feedback from peers to improve the creation of online language learning activities. Next slide, please. So TTLO is a very intensive 3-week course that is about 120 hours total, so approximately 40 hours per week. It simulates a face-to-face course, but it is almost entirely asynchronous, so participants can adjust when they actually do the work. The one fixed element in the course in terms of timing is that participants have deadlines at 4 p.m. at midnight each day of the 3-week course. One of the reasons that Marlene designed such an intensive course is to overcome the concern that many of the language teachers who take the course would not have access to development teams on their campus to help them with the creation of an online course. The idea then is to give them as much information and experience as we can so participants interact with a lot of content during the 3 weeks. The course is divided into 3 units, each taught by a different member of the 3-person course team, which includes Marlene, and each unit is 1 week long. So in Unit 1, there's an introduction that includes building community, which is quite different in an online environment. And it also involves participants watching movies of the different faces of the instructors and taking a site tour of the Moodle course so that they know how things work. And at the end of this introduction, they take a quiz and consider the question, am I ready to teach online? Participants then explore the resources available to them at their own institution and do an analysis of their students, context, institution, and program. They also look at some general course development checklists and guidelines, and they're asked to evaluate the TTLO course using these checklists. This has been a really useful tool for Marlene and her team because they've been able to improve the course from their students' comments. Participants also make use of these checklists when they create their own courses in the future. They also, in this first unit, investigate tips for effective online teaching, and they experience group work in a project and a jigsaw activity to see how those work online. In the second unit, students experience what it's like to learn a language online by learning a little bit of Spanish. And many of them say that they understand their students a lot better as a result of doing this, and have a much better understanding of the online learning experience. Based on what they see in the Spanish lab as students, they then put on their teacher hats and look critically at the activities that they participated in. Unit 2 concludes with some additional content specific to language teaching online, such as how to detect plagiarism or how to give students feedback. In the third unit, participants learn new technology tools organized in the framework of the 3 communicative modes. And the instructors stress that it's important to focus not just on interpretive communication in an online environment, but also on production, which is quite possible. In this unit, Marlene has also built in 2 synchronous activities. One is a partner activity to use the language in a real-time activity, and the second is to show how a synchronous class can keep the students engaged rather than just being a talking head that students have to listen in on. As a final course project, participants create an e-portfolio to demonstrate to peers and administrators what they have learned, but also to gain experience with an e-portfolio so that they can assign them to students later on and understand how to use an outside platform that they could use with their class. Next slide, please. So I'd like to conclude by talking about challenges, successes, and impact of the TTLO project. In terms of challenges, what Marlene has found is that many of the LCTL teachers who take this program frequently come with no language pedagogy or methods course background. We ask for certain foundations and require a sample lesson plan in the application materials, but this is not a surefire way to ensure that teachers have the background that they need in language pedagogy. As I stated earlier, the course is offered in an intense format, so the content to time ratio is very challenging. But we feel that since this is the only professional development that these LCTL teachers have for teaching online, we have to give them as much as we can during the 3 weeks. Online courses frequently have about a 50% attrition rate, and this course is no exception. The CARLA Summer Institute, which is offered for more commonly taught languages, has had better retention rates than the StarTalk course. It's had about a 90% retention rate. But in that case, participants have to pay to participate, whereas StarTalk is free. And then a final challenge is facilitator burnout. All the preparation has to take place well in advance of the course. And then during the course, there are many hours of reading, responding to questions, and interacting with online students. In spite of these challenges, we've experienced a number of successes. One is that we've been able to mentor 3 former teacher participants in the StarTalk course who are now teaching the fall semester version of the summer intensive course for less commonly taught languages. As we already mentioned, we've been able to improve the course based on teacher feedback in the course design activity. Another success is that the StarTalk program directors and staff have been very interested in taking our course and adding online modules to their programs. So they're now we're offering a trial course this fall in a semester-long format for StarTalk employees. And because there was so much interest from teachers of French, Spanish, German, and ESL, we were able to offer the course as a summer institute at CARLA for the past 3 years. And this course fills pretty well without a lot of advertising. In terms of impact, as you can see on the slide, we've served approximately 160 teachers over the 5 years of this TTLO course, and we've attracted teachers of 13 less commonly taught languages. We've also serviced an additional 40 participants in the CARLA Summer Institute version of the course from languages including French, German, Spanish, and English as a second language. So if you're interested in learning more about the course or resources for teaching online, we've included URLs at the bottom of the slide, including one that directs you to information about the course in particular. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kate, for that very interesting and thoughtful presentation. Please sit tight and we'll come back for possible questions from the audience. And just as a reminder, please, the audience should submit their questions via the chat box online. Thank you. Next up, we are happy to have Paula Winke from Michigan State University. Paula currently serves as Associate Professor and is part of the core faculty within the Second Language Studies PhD program. The title of her presentation is Untitled Voices, a new tool to help with oral assessment. Paula?
Hi, thank you so much, Gary. I'm really excited to be here today to tell you about Untitled Voices. And this is a project that I've been working on with funding from the Center for Language Education and Research, CLEAR, at Michigan State University with my colleague, Dr. Patti Spinner, who's actually teaching a class right now. So apologies that she could not be here with us to talk about our assessment system. So it's called Untitled Voices, and it's a product. It's a new tool to help with oral assessment. And the reason why we wanted to work on this was because a lot of teachers and students in Untitled programs need more experience with online oral assessment. At the end of several years of study, if they want to become a professional in the language, or if they want to, for example, teach in the state of Michigan, they need to be certified to do that. And right now, a lot of the laws across the United States are that they have to pass an oral proficiency interview exam, either face-to-face or over the computer, and reach intermediate high or advanced low, depending on the language. So we wanted to help with that because we don't want our LCTL students to not be able to do well on the final assessment piece for their certification or job credentials due to a lack of experience. So this is a free tool that students can use throughout 4 years of their language program to assess their foreign language development. And it goes directly to their teachers, so their teachers can use the oral speech samples to listen, provide feedback, grade. The teachers can download them, and I'll be showing you a little bit more about the tool itself. So can you turn to the next slide, please? Okay. So Untitled Voices, it's free. That's the key to this whole product. It's easy to use and it's easy to access. And we've designed it for a number of different languages. The basic interface is all in English, but the tests themselves are available in a total of 35 different LCTLs. And some of those include Arabic, Hausa, Hebrew, Indonesian, Persian, Tamil, Uzbek, and many more. We keep adding them, the different languages, as we find native speakers to record the oral prompts for us. The test itself is for 8 levels of proficiency. So this is for first semester students, second, all the way through the 8th semester, which would be the 4th year final semester of study. And within each semester, there are 2 exams that can be used. They can be used as practice, or they can be integrated as part of a midterm or a final exam. So altogether, there are 16 tests spread across general 4-year curriculum. And we find that it's useful for students, teachers, but also the key, because this is coming out of CLEAR, the Center for Language Education and Research, it has a research component as well. I'm a specialist in language assessment, and my partner, Patti Spinner, is a specialist in the acquisition of morphosyntax. So we wanted this, the speech samples to be available for researchers to download. And they are, as long as the students and teachers give their permission for the research end of the entire project. And what we are hoping is that people who are researching the acquisition of lictals can use the speech samples, which are de-identified, so that they can study the acquisition of grammatical functions in various lictals, or they could map the development of syntax, or also look at how tone acquisition occurs in various lictals. So the possibilities, we think, are endless. So next slide, I'm going to show you one of the prompts. Altogether, our system has 64 different language prompts. Each test has 4 prompts. And I worked closely with Dr. Spinner, who specializes in morphosyntax, to make sure that each assessment that a student might take elicits a variety of different speech. So first person, second person, third person, and also the students are prompted to ask questions so that we can get a variety of speech and not just first person narratives, which sometimes happens by default. But we wanted a rich tracking of language development in the lictals across all 4 years. So all of the prompts are designed to link together, and that includes the look and feel of the online exam. So the pictures were all drawn by a single artist. We used money from the grant to hire a graphic designer, and we happened to find an undergraduate student here at Michigan State University. He was a comic strip drawer for one of the student newspapers' comic strips. And he worked with us closely to draw these prompts, and he had to draw them multiple times to our specifications to include more things that would prompt more speech throughout the testing. So when a student goes in, they see the picture prompt, which is to elicit speech, to give them examples, but they also then read the directions in English of what they're supposed to talk about. And that's the common platform for all language students. But then they click a button to hear the prompt, the question that's being asked, in the language that they're learning now. So that's where we have recorded with native speakers about 35 different languages. So when they log on, they select which language they're testing in, and that then cues the follow-up of which language audio files they will be listening to. What's unique about this is we were interested in allowing students to practice, so they can record their speech sample multiple times. There's no limit on how long they talk or how many times they do the recording. Their teacher can set that for them if they want to. But it's supposed to be adaptable for the teacher and for the student. And on the researcher's end, we are very interested in how students self-correct, or what types of linguistic errors are common at the various levels of proficiency. So we see some real beauty in allowing students to practice both pedagogically and theoretically. If you turn the slide. So now we're looking at one of the rubrics. What we have found is that lictal teachers often need more guidance on how to use the audio files. They can download them to listen to them, to give feedback, and to store them in the student's portfolio, or electronic portfolio if they would like. But we also have PDFs of different rubrics that they can use to score the students' speech samples. And we focus, instead of on linguistic accuracy or complexity, we try to focus on task completion, because we want our LCTL teachers to create task-based syllabi. So we also want them to test whether or not students are able to do respond to the prompts that are given during the oral exam. So it focuses on task completion, and they can give points, they can use it for grading, and they can use these sample rubrics for providing feedback. So the next slide. This is just a sample of what the online system looks like. This is responses from Turkish, and teachers and students can listen to their own responses. Teachers get a bank of all of their students' responses, and they can listen to them there, grade them online, or they can download them to their own computers for saving. And you can turn the slide again. And this is what the researchers can do. This is the power behind this database, is that it's a searchable database that all of the students who clicked a checkbox saying that they will allow their audio files to be released to the public, de-identified. Someone could go in and check saying they want to only listen and download speech samples from native English speakers who are learning Korean, and they could click all 4 years of study. And they can set an age range too, if they want to filter out anyone over a certain age. And go ahead and click search, and they will be able to download a large sample, we hope, after a few years, if people keep having their students take these tests, so that we can do some fundamental research that will help us with textbook design, anything that we need to have a record of how native English speakers, for example, how they function in the process of acquiring these LCTL languages. So I have one more slide. It has our contact information. So we are signing teachers up. We've done a full run of pilot testing here at Michigan State University with our own LCTL teachers. We have now opened the system up to LCTL teachers from across the United States. All they need to do is email us, and we will get their information to add them to the system, and they can add their students and have them take the tests. And if you're a researcher interested in it, that's the same process that you could contact us. So also, if you have any questions about the project and what we've been doing with our funding here at Michigan State, feel free to email us.
Thank you very much, Paula, for that innovative presentation on language assessment. And just again, as a reminder, you can submit your questions at the in the chat box at the bottom of the screen. So last but not least, we have Anne Blackburn from Cornell University. Anne is Professor of South Asia Studies and Buddhist Studies in the Department of Asian Studies at Cornell University. The title of her presentation is Leveraging Technology and Resources in the Teaching of South Asia LCTLs. Anne?
Great. Thanks very much, everyone. And a special thanks to our colleagues in Washington who put together this conference on rather short notice at a time when so much is happening there. We really are appreciative of the opportunity to share information and benefit from advice coming out of Washington also. Today I'll be speaking under my hat as director of the Cornell South Asia program. The Cornell South Asia program is part of the Cornell Syracuse South Asia Consortial NRC. We could have the first slide with just the logo, and then onto the second slide, please, with the title. Thank you. Today, I want to speak about one dimension of our last NRC application and NRC activities during the current National Resource Center grant cycle, now in year 4, focusing on leveraging technology and resources, as you can see in the title slide. A Mellon-funded collaboration between Cornell, Columbia, and Yale universities related to LCTLs, that is, less commonly taught languages, provided financial and technical resources for a pilot project exchanging a variety of less commonly taught languages, including South Asian languages, which are among the least commonly taught of the less commonly taught languages, something referred to earlier by our colleagues in Madison. This was a pilot project exchanging LCTLs across 3 university campuses, making these languages available to students at Cornell, Columbia, Barnard, NYU, Yale, and Syracuse. And I want to thank my colleague Dick Feldman, director of the Language Resource Center at Cornell University, and his colleague Lisa Sansusi for contributing some of the data that I'm referring to in the presentation today. May I have the next slide, please, the main point summary slide? Thank you. That gives you a sense of where we're heading today. And then the next slide, please, resource leveraging. Great. So in the last NRC FLAS application cycle, the Cornell-Syracuse South Asia Consortium was able to take advantage of a special resource leveraging opportunity. This was thanks to an agreement dating to 2012 and Yale universities, an agreement to share language courses via video conference synchronous classroom technology on a no tuition basis. And it was made possible also, very importantly, by receipt of a substantial Mellon Foundation grant to the tune of $2.4 million over 5 years in support of the project, which made possible the introduction of new technical resources at each of the participating campuses, and of course to defray also some administrative costs. This project, Mellon-funded project, has come to be known as the Shared Course Initiative. So when the Cornell-Syracuse South Asia NRC was developing its NRC FLAS proposal, this agreement, the Shared Course Initiative agreement, had already been underway briefly. We were able to draw on that as a foundational resource in developing 2 aspects of our grant application. First, accessing Tamil language from Columbia University via the Shared Course Initiative made it possible for our National Resource Center to propose and then develop a Tamil Studies initiative comprising several curricular components. Tamil language was a critical component. Without that, we could not have proposed this initiative. Then leveraging the Mellon funding, allowing us to write the Tamil Studies initiative into the NRC FLAS grant application, later allowed us to leverage additional funding from Cornell University in support of a Tamil Studies visiting scholar for 4 years. My point here is simply the ways in which these different adventures intersected, and we were able to deepen our curriculum through a series of interlocking measures. The patience required with leveraging technology is obviously of a high order. So we wanted to, we were just trying to communicate a few examples of student impacts, and then I want to convey some views from instructors about their developing their own capacity to participate in this video conference teaching. We see, for instance, an undergraduate student in global health who moved from a heritage language base in Punjabi to a more flexible and sophisticated competence for professional use. An MA student in Asian Studies who, on the basis of studying 2 years of Tamil, was able to move into a thesis project and then competitive doctoral applications. An interesting case of a PhD student who started in classical Tibetan as an undergrad at Columbia, matriculated at Cornell as a PhD student, continued that study through the Shared Course Initiative, and was able, therefore, to make the best possible intellectual use of a move between institutions and expand the language study. I could go on with additional examples, but I just want to indicate that we are looking at a technology that allows for undergrads and grads, heritage and non-heritage learners, and our students are gaining access to more competitive professional and educational opportunities through university language exchange using this video conference synchronous learning. If I could have the next slide, please, which now is slide 6. We need to catch up a bit. One more, please. Yes, thank you. Okay, so developing language instructors' capacity for video conference teaching. Notably, at Cornell, in any case, the instructors who got involved with the Shared Course Initiative had already had some interest in distance teaching and had been using some more modest technologies in the past on an occasional basis. So I suppose they were good candidates for video conference teaching, but they still needed considerable training and support in order to learn to teach. As part of the Shared Course Initiative, there were annual pedagogy conferences lasting 2.5 days, which brought together instructors and administrators working on the application canvas that was used in the video conferencing classrooms, and really discussing nuts and bolts of working with this technology, including very basic things such as working with the camera setting and things of that kind, sharing best practices, and so on. One of the very interesting features, I think, of these pedagogy conferences was that each instructor had to give a class with the other instructors as students in order to test out and refine their instructional strategies and impacts, making use of the new technologies that they were developing over a several-year period. The Mellon funding supported travel by participating faculty to other training events related to synchronous learning. There were workshops, of course, at the language resource centers on the various campuses. And really critically, there was instructor-specific training by the language resource director and technical manager in order to address specific instructor questions and test out possible classroom scenarios. All the instructors I've spoken with emphasized that the accessibility and the skilled intervention of the language resource center staff were critical to their success and enjoyment as instructors. Now, when I spoke with some of our instructors about this process of synchronous teaching, I expected to hear a laundry list of woes getting used to a new instructional modality, but a number of very interesting things came through from instructors that I wanted to share with you here today. One is that in a number of the classrooms, the instructors had the feeling that student commitment had increased because they felt themselves part of a community larger than that of their own campus. Another thing that was mentioned, which I found striking, was that the instructor judged that the students enjoyed having a high-tech environment, that they found it somehow captivating. And one of the things that was also mentioned was that in using the synchronous classroom, there is a shifting visual field as the camera is moving, there's a focus on different students in the classroom at different points in time. And one of our instructors observed that this actually added to the vitality of the classroom rather than detracting from it. I don't know whether this squares with other in research that others of you have done, but it was mentioned here and we found it interesting that it's something that actually energized the classroom rather than detracting from it. And I began to wonder whether this serves in some ways similar to that long-time language teaching practice of shifting the activities every 10 minutes or so in order to keep the momentum in the room. So what we found is that for highly motivated language instructors, there can be real enjoyment in exploring the new teaching modalities. We've also noticed that since instructors language faculty often have a strong personal as well as intellectual interest in a particular language, they may derive a strong satisfaction from increasing the number of students nationally who can learn their language. Many of our faculty members realize that they are teaching the least commonly taught of the less commonly taught languages, and that this is in some sense a precious undertaking. Last slide, please, slide 7. Oops, okay, great. So you can just look at the contact info there. I can refer you to other of my colleagues for more specialized questions if I can't answer them. I want to just end with a few statements on the implications of the pilot project for future initiatives. So through access to this 5-year Mellon-supported shared course initiative pilot project through our Language Resource Center and our College of Arts and Sciences, our NRC, the Cornell Syracuse NRC, has seen that video conference language pedagogy can be extremely effective for students. It can inspire teachers and support strategic curricular and programming expansion. Having rigorously tested the pedagogy with undergraduate and graduate students over 5 years, 4 years intersecting with this last NRC grant, we are certainly prepared to think more widely about how this technology can be used with a wider set of partner institutions related to priority outreach activities, as well as our own undergraduate and graduate teaching missions. Our opportunity to link NRC-supported language teaching with the Shared Course Initiative provided this really fundamental pilot project, allowing us to evaluate the viability of this teaching tool. I would like to end by saying that we at Cornell, and I think in our wider consortium with Syracuse University, remain committed to the key principle that video conference language programs should expand, not replicate, offerings at home institutions. If a language is offered at a home student to
So we are going to open up for taking some questions. And again, questions can be asked in the chat box located at the bottom of the screen, of your screen. Let's see, scrolling through.
This question is for Kate, and it's from Valerie from Tulane University. Do you have any anecdotal feedback from teachers of LCTLs on implementing what they've learned in this course and how they've applied it?
So thank you for your question. I had on the last slide some teacher participant feedback. So let me just summarize that a little bit. Some of the feedback that we've gotten is that teachers have more realistic expectations of what it looks like to teach online. And they also have a better understanding of their students when they're experiencing an online course. They have said that the course provides them with many resources that they can incorporate into their online teaching and learning. And that also it has helped them think about their face-to-face teaching a little bit more carefully and what that can look like. We don't collect, as far as I know, we don't have feedback on what teachers did after they got back into the classroom and the impact of the course from a longer term perspective when they're back in the classroom interacting with their students. So if you're curious to know about that, Marlene may be able to answer that question a little bit more fully. So you can email her with that particular question. I don't know if she'll have the answer to it, but she might be able to help you with that.
Okay. This question is for Mike and Mary Jo. This is from Lenny, and he would like to know, besides the possible technical difficulties, what other challenges have you faced when developing distance learning courses and partnering with other institutions?
I mean, initially, you're talking, this I'm assuming has to do with our SWAP program.
I'm assuming, yes.
I'm guessing is that the first thing that has to happen is we have to reach out to the other university that has a language that we're seeking, and it has to make sure that we have something to offer them, obviously. So, I mean, and that has been resolved largely now through unfinished but attempted MOUs. In other words, we have to come to an agreement as to whether or not it's going to be an equal swap, whether or not the exact number of students need to be swapped back and forth, whether or not we're going to assume that it will come out after 4 or 5 years. What's interesting about the 2 swaps that we have done, one with Northern Illinois University and more recently with University of California, Berkeley, is largely these swaps have developed very elaborate MOUs that have actually never been signed, but in other words, then the institutions at both universities have assumed that they will operate as pilot projects, and they've been very successful pilot projects. But in terms of some of the technical things, which you might be, I think Mary Jo could speak to, I think, some of the technical things, but administratively, it's finding a partner that has a language that you want and having a language at your university and a trained teacher and the technology available that we can offer it. And when it works brilliantly. The technology, as I mentioned before, differs. We have different, it's all synchronous. But there are different kinds of technology that we use, and we usually rely on our learning support services people to help us out. But sometimes, as Mary Jo mentioned, it can be through an iPad. It can be operated in a number of different ways. I don't know if that answers the whole question, Mary Jo, if you want to.
It's far best to have a dedicated video conferencing room. The difficulty with that is just simply cost. Especially for like an intensive class that's meeting 4.5 hours a day every day for 8 weeks. It's tough to find enough classroom space to do that with more than 1 or 2 classes per summer. But it's certainly the gold standard in terms of the technology.
I could add just quickly in terms of both of the swaps that we've dealt with quite a lot have not come out equal. In other words, sometimes we take more from the sending university, and sometimes we give more. We send more out. So we've decided that it doesn't really matter whether it comes out even. It's that we're doing a service to each other, and it's been pretty useful.
Okay. this question is also for Kate. Does this training program tackle how to teach different scripts, such as Thai and Burmese?
No. So what we focus on in this course is teacher professional development, not language learning per se. So even though StarTalk programs are typically about promoting language learning in relation to LCTLs, we take a little bit of a different tack and we focus on teacher professional development. So how teachers can organize instruction that is pedagogically and technologically sound to facilitate teaching of less commonly taught languages. So there's no real specific attention to the instruction of less commonly taught languages in the course. But in terms of teaching strategies, I mean.
Thank you very much, Kate. I believe this question is for Paula. My screen moved, apologize. Where can we find a list of languages this assessment is designed for? Again, this question is for Paula.
Yes, if you send me an email at winke@msu.edu, I can send you the URL that will give a list of the different languages. And we're also open to adding more. We have a computer programmer who can add languages for us. All we need to do is identify a native speaker who can record the 64 prompts. We don't need that person to be here. So if you have a language that you want added and it's not in our list, we can get that done within a couple of weeks.
Thank you. Another question for Paula. To what extent and in what manner, my screen moved again. To what extent and in what manner have the tests been assessed in terms of validity and reliability?
Right now, the tests have not been assessed on the outcome side. It's more that the validity arguments that we have for this exam have come from the experts who have put their work in designing it. As part of the project, we had the entire assessment system reviewed by assessment specialists, and we've had feedback from teachers during the pilot phase to reorganize things and also to adapt the interface, the online interface with accessing for students and teachers the various components of the exam. But we have not collected scores in any way, since the teachers are the ones who are scoring these exams and using them for classroom purposes and for individual feedback directly to their students. We don't have on our end a collection of the scores. So in that sense, the items have not been tested for their reliability in a quantitative fashion. More the validity argument is coming from the efforts in building it and revising it to make sure that it's a machine that works really well.
Okay, thank you, Paula.
Oh, and we did one more comment. We built it on the ACTFL guidelines, so it was also the item design and the process for the examination is according to the ACTFL proficiency levels.
Paula. And this is to everyone on the panel. Can you offer some tips in terms of increasing interactivity among instructor and students and among students themselves in a long distance class? And this is open again to everyone that would like to answer it.
Could take a stab at it.
Okay.
Hang on, let me turn off the. One thing that we've found, and we try to prepare students before they become distant students in a language classroom, is sending them a pre-instructional email that just talks about just I don't know how to put it, the sense of just acknowledging the fact that they are literally physically distant from the rest of their classroom, so they do have to put out extra effort to reach out to students in the classroom and to acknowledge the sense that, say if other students are going to go after class to get an ice cream cone or something, they're going to feel left out. So to try to, make the students aware that that's a common occurrence, it's not just them, and to prepare them for getting some tools for, having a weekly or a couple times a week check-in with other students outside of class, or some sort of video hangout time or something, so that they can feel like they're part of the informal learning group as well as part of the formal classroom. We also ask teachers to be aware of that too. If students are starting, if the distance student, the off-campus student is not participating as engaged as they may have been, earlier classes, to reach out to the student perhaps after class and just try to pull them back in.
Thank you very much, Mary Jo. While we have you still up on the screen, what appears to be a trending is we're getting several questions regarding your language swap agreement. And I know you addressed this to some capacity during the presentation, but a lot of folks are curious about your registration, how that works. And I know you touched upon it, but can you dive a little deeper into that?
Yeah, I'll make a stab at it. I mean, basically, people register at their own university, right? So we can only swap with universities that already would have some equivalent course on their record. In other words, some kind of a course in Southeast Asian language, or a specific course that might relate to Thai. And so far, these have been our swap partners. Our partners have been people who have these languages or equivalent languages and remember, we're only working on Southeast Asian languages, 8 of them. So we're not attempting to go beyond that. So our partners have been pretty obvious for swaps. We partnered with Northern Illinois University, where we took from them Burmese and we gave them Vietnamese. Our swap with the University of California at Berkeley is we took Khmer from them and we offered them Thai. So we're looking for other partners for swaps, but there is no, the registration for our students is at UW-Madison. The registration for the Berkeley students is at UC Berkeley. And there's no extra cost. The students, of course, have to pay their tuition at their individual schools, but there's no extra cost for the service. And there's a lot of extra service being given. And actually, I was reminded when Anne was talking about the importance of the learning support services, we have an additional departmental service that we get because we have a language pedagogist, Dr. Erin Barnard, who actually works in our Languages and Cultures of Asia department with the teachers, so that she observes the classes, works on technology development, works on how it can work better. So we have a lot of support, but it's still focused on partners that we can work with. It's not wide open. And you, Mary Jo, might want to add to that.
The only other thing I think that the general rule with that is that in terms of like the semester begin date and end date don't always match up, so that it's the sending institution that determines when the classes are starting. So
we just had an issue with Berkeley over the fact that their advanced or their beginning level Khmer class was offered in the late afternoon, 2 hours difference between Madison and Berkeley. So it didn't work. We had to drop that particular class and go on to others because it didn't work in terms of the time.
Okay, thank you very much, Mike and Mary Jo. I have a short question here. I'm kind of curious myself. This is from Monica. How do you administer tests online? And that's open to anyone on the panel. And perhaps?
Hi. Yes, I'm actually haven't observed a testing session online. I've observed some other aspects of the teaching, so I can't speak to that directly. But I would be delighted to put you in touch with some of our colleagues who could speak to that more concretely. One thing that relates to this in part is the way in which in these sort of smart classrooms, you can scan and send, print and scan documents and send them across very, very quickly into the classroom and have a prompt exchange of materials that way. That plays out partly for examinations and partly for homework assignments. But if I could, I'd like to hop back just very, very briefly to one of the other questions that was a collective question that we weren't able to fully respond to as a group, namely the very interesting question about how do you galvanize the connection between communication between the instructor and the students in this distance learning environment. One of the things that the Shared Course Initiative has explored, which seems to have been very, very helpful, was that the instructors visited their other campuses, participating campuses once per term. Now, of course, this is possible in schools more proximate in the Northeast, and it would be more costly and ambitious if one were doing this across a wider geography. But our experience shows that this helped to really build a bond between students and instructor and make it much easier, much more natural for the students to then feel a part of the project and feel also comfortable reaching out to the instructor, in any time where a difficulty might arise. Thank you.
Okay. And this question is for Paula. We could jump back to Paula. Eva wants to know, does the test assess for cultural competencies? Again, this is for Paula.
Right. I think that we would have to look at the individual items that are on the test to understand that better. I know that IFLE is producing right now. I know some people have a hot copy of it, of statements, can-do statements for intercultural competency. But those were not out when we embarked on this project. And no, our test is more of an oral proficiency interview. It mimics, in a way, if you will, the IFLE OPIC, the oral proficiency interview computerized. And that's been one of the questions that has come up as people are using the IFLE OPIC, is how much of the score represents communicative and intercultural competence.
Thank you, Paula. And let me see. So this question is for Kate. What level are most of the teachers taking the CARLA course planning on teaching?
So my understanding is that many of the participants in both the TTLO for Star Talk and the TTLO for CARLA are college instructors as opposed to K-12, but I don't have specific numbers on that. In terms of the levels that they're planning on teaching, I think most of them are planning on teaching introductory and intermediate level language courses, is my understanding.
Thank you. I'd like to ask a specific question, and this is to anybody on the panel. In terms of recruitment for students to engage in or take some of these online courses, I think it would be interesting for our audience to provide them with some insight into how recruitment is handled for classes that focus on less commonly taught languages. So, and that's again opened up to anybody on the panel.
I can speak from the Cornell side if it's helpful. There's really a combined effort ongoing among several units on campus. The languages are housed within the Department of Asian Studies as the teaching unit. The Shared Course Initiative and the technological support is coming through the Language Resource Center with backing from the College of Arts and Sciences. The South Asia program from which I'm speaking has the role of facilitating curriculum related to South Asia on campus. And so all of these units, the Language Resource Center, the Department of Asian Studies, and the South Asia Program work together to disseminate information about these courses through a number of means, of course, posters and all that kind of thing, but also Facebook page, web page, and things of that kind, especially since the curriculum sometimes varies year to year or a new language is added and so on. We have to let the constituency, student constituency, know that these things are possible. We've also been able to make use of the student organizations on campus, the South Asia student organizations on campus, since in many cases they contain people who might join us as heritage language learners, and the word gets out amongst the students. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anne. And I think we have time for one more question. Someone is interested in knowing how they handle technical glitches that may come about during an online course. And again, that could be open to you, Anne, or perhaps Mike and Mary Jo, or anybody else on the panel that would like to answer that question.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm happy to give it. I'm sure it's. Oh, hang on. Certainly, some of the technical difficulties. You know, we try to avoid in advance by making sure that the testing long before classes begin, whether the video signal and the audio signal work. So that is totally the key. Having technical problems during it, that having staff on hand to try to work behind the scenes to deal with the technology is the other key. Having to stop a class in the middle of the class to deal with the student on the screen to say, can you hear me now? Can you see me now? That really kills the momentum of a class. So that's the situation that we try as much as possible to avoid. And students, if there are technical problems like that during class, it affects the whole classroom dynamic. It makes it a difficult learning environment. So trying to keep the technical stuff behind the scenes and dealt with so that the teacher can concentrate on teaching, the students can concentrate on learning, and other people are dealing with the technical problems.
I'll just say one. We had one really interesting thing last summer at CIASI. We started out with a distant student who then, it wasn't specifically because of technical difficulties, but he decided that looking at the classroom that he kind of wanted to be there. So he came. So after 1 week of doing the CIASI by distance, he showed up in Madison and entered the class, and it was a rather interesting moment.
I would just jump in and say, where possible, you want your instructors to have a sense of humor.
Okay, thank you very much. And I believe we've run out of time, but we would like to take this opportunity to thank the distinguished panel for sharing their knowledge and experiences with online learning language courses. And you did a very good job in providing our viewership with a wealth of information concerning language learning and assessment. And it was both very interesting and insightful. This concludes our presentation. Thank you for participating.